All right. He is as good as it gets. One of the most humble gentlemen you'll ever meet. Former Wake Forest and also Baylor football coach Jim Grobe decided not to play golf this afternoon so he could join us on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. How you been, Coach?
Too good, Smokey. How you doing?
We're doing well. Paul, Catalina, Craig Smoak, David Smoak with Jim Grobe. So how much do you get a chance to watch Baylor? And what are your thoughts about what you've seen Dave Aranda do after what Matt Rule did before he went to the NFL?
Well, we get to see him once in a while. We don't get all the games back here in Georgia, but just amazing. I mean, what a great job. I think that, nobody realizes how hard it is to pull all those pieces together, and then to follow what Matt Rule did was no easy task. And to see those guys play this year and see how well they balanced out, offensively, defensively, special teams, all those things, and how many close games they had that they came out on top. Just as good a coaching job, I think, as it was done in the country.
Jalen Petrie was the only recruit that you guys had on the board when you were here for that one season. What do you remember about talking to him during that time in what was a very unique situation?
Well, we lost about every kid, Smoke, when they were when we were trying to keep those kids in the boat. I was going all over the place and spent a lot of time on the phone trying to tell people what a great place Baylor was. And it was just a lot of nasty stuff being said by a lot of schools, pulling kids away from us. And to have him stick with us and come to Baylor was just really, really special. And it's fun to see, the kids that, that hung in there with us and stayed at Baylor. The success that they've had is very well deserved.
I was looking over the 2016 roster, Coach, and I think on this current team, the only player that still remains from 2016 is Raleigh Tejada, cornerback, and he's obviously continued to be heavily involved. Now, he was a young player when you were around him, just a freshman, but do you have any memories of interactions with Raleigh or maybe just kind of noticing something from him early on?
I just remember him being a wonderful kid, and he's one of those kids that had the most beautiful smile. I just always liked being around him. He made you feel good just with a great smile, and it's great to see him doing so well. Jaron McVay at the end of the game to make that great play. I mean, that was so cool. I mean, it's just been through the years for us to see Baylor play as well as they have under Matt Rule. And now under Dave Aranda has just been really a lot of fun for me and Holly back here in Georgia.
You mentioned Jaron, and I
forgot about him, yeah.
And, of course, he made the play that I voted him for MVP with all due respect to Shapen because he also had a pick in that game. But you mentioned him. He was a walk-on and really had very little interest from anybody. I think Texas Southern was one or a couple of others. Your thoughts about what you saw in Jaron, if you remember that story?
Well, again, a kid that worked hard every day, and I think my heart is with walk-ons. People don't realize when a kid comes to play as a walk-on, he's really coming for one reason. He loves to play football. Now, hopefully, in the back of his mind, he's being motivated by the possibility of earning a scholarship and maybe being able to play. But kids that walk on at a school like Baylor, playing at the highest level, playing in the Power 5 conferences, for them to stay and earn a scholarship and end up, playing at a high level, being starter, those kind of things, is just really, really special. But really your team, the success of your team is as much due to the walk-ons that come to work every day and help you practice every day at a great level. That's what makes teams great. And so my heart as a coach has always been with walk-ons, and I tell my team all the time, hey, I love the guys that are here on scholarship, but the guys I admire the most are the guys that are here playing football just because they love the game.
What do you think of Dave Aranda's style? It's probably more aligned with what you did at Wake Forest than when you had come in here to the wide-open offense at Baylor.
Well, I think that there's a mix in there. I loved when I first got to Baylor. I loved what we were doing offensively, but we went so fast sometimes. I didn't even have a chance to ask Phil Bennett, our defensive coordinator, on fourth down if he thought we were going to go for it. KB'd already snapped the ball by the time I'm looking down the sideline and going to ask Phil if he wants us to go for it. Before I can ask him, it's already been snapped and we're gone. And it puts a lot of pressure on the defense to do that. And so I think the thing that I've really admired about Dave Aranda and his coaching staff is that they're really solid offensively, but they also play great defense, and they've got a good mix of the way they put those two things together. I think to watch them play, I just think it's a total team, including their special teams. I just think Baylor's special.
Coach, between all the stuff that's facing college athletics these days, we had, expansion and realignment when the OU and Texas news dropped during the summer, and that created a whole domino effect. You got name, image, likeness. You've got transfer portal. How happy are you to not be coaching right now and dealing with all that type of stuff?
Well, I tell people a lot, what I really miss is coaching a position. I miss my linebackers. I miss when I could go out on the field and just coach linebackers. There's kind of a formula to this thing. When you're an assistant coach, that equals fun. And when you're a head coach, it pretty much means no fun. Because if you're not out there every day coaching a position, you don't get as close to the players, to your position group as you would like. And then with all the things that are going on right now, I still love coaching and I miss being in coaching. But with all the things that are going on with the transfer portal and NIL and all the things that are going on right now, it's a different world out there, and I think everybody's going to have to adapt.
When you arrived at Baylor, there was a tough situation that you faced, and of course, as you said, everything was being said about everybody, and you tried to tell them about your experience in the short amount of time you were there. One of the guys on the staff, Jeff Lebby, and of course, he was the son-in-law of Coach Briles, and the brother-in-law of Kendall. He now has the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. He has moved back up the ladder. He just did a great job at Ole Miss. What do you remember about just seeing and watching Jeff Lebby when he was at Baylor?
Well, Jeff Lebby's one of the coaches that I admire. That's one of the he had a lot of pressure on him there. I took a lot of criticism because I kept all the staff together when I got there, but to my knowledge, the staff had not done anything wrong, and so I kept those guys and took a lot of criticism from the press and a lot of different directions. A lot of bullets were flying in a lot of different directions, but I've never been around a better coach than Jeff Lebby. Jeff had our special teams as well as coaching the running backs, and he worked really well with KB. KB's another one of my guys that I love, but I just fell in love with Jeff Lebby and his coaching style. And one of the greatest coaching points that I stayed in coaching, I was going to make all my coaches use it all the time. Leb was so good with these players, and he had a great relationship with them, but he could really be tough with them if he needed to. But whenever he was trying to make a coaching point with his players, he would look them right in the eye and he would say, "Does that make sense?" And if they said, "Yes, sir," then they better get it right, because if they screwed it up after he specifically asked, because here's the deal. When you're watching video or when you're looking at the playbook, showing them the playbook, or when you're walking through it on the field, kids learn different ways. A lot of kids can't learn it by watching film. A lot of kids can't learn it by the playbook. A lot of kids can't learn it by you just saying it to them. So you got to find a way for the kids to figure out what the coaching point is. And I thought Leb's point to him was, "Does that make sense?" was perfect. And he's one of my favorite coaches. I love being around him. And I thought, KB had a tough time too with his dad having been gone, and then Leb, that was tough. With him, his situation going home with his wife and family every night. So he's just one of my favorite guys. I can't say enough good things about Jeff Lebby.
Dave Clawson's done one heck of a job at your other former stop there at Wake Forest, Coach. And, I know they fell short of the ACC title, but that offense was wide open. They were one of the toughest teams to play in the entire country this year. And what do you think about Wake Forest's potential now that Dave Clawson has made at least a commitment to stay in the short term?
Well, Dave's done a great job at Wake Forest. And Dave's very similar to the way we were when I was at Baylor. I mean, they play speedball now, and that puts your defense out there a lot. They're the thing. I love the teams that play really, really fast. I really do, and I had a lot of fun watching KB and Jeff and those guys run the offense. But the problem is, you might score in 3 plays, or you may throw 3 incomplete passes and be off in 3 plays. And so, a lot of times the defense is just hitting the seat of their pants on the bench, and you're saying, defense, get ready. And so in watching Wake Forest, it just makes me remember so much how much fun it was to watch the offense at Baylor, but the defense has really got to be ready at the drop of a hat to go right back. And it's not always, a lot of teams are 3 plays and out, but a lot of times at Baylor it was 3 plays and score, and that's the way Wake Forest was this year, and it's been fun to watch. I mean, they're just really electric offensively and play really, really fast. If you think of Wake Forest offense, it's very similar to the way we were at Baylor with KB and Leb and those guys.
Jim, you mentioned Levy, and I had a conversation, a short one today, with Randy Clements, who's at North Texas as a volunteer coach. Phil Bennett is there, among some others as well. Taylor Young, the linebacker, is there on staff, and there's others, and they're all spread around the country. You had to deal with that staff, and you've kind of discussed that with us before, and you've brought it up a little bit today. Was there ever a time, because there was always this thought that maybe they shut it down. I know things were tough when you played down in Texas that game when you were 6-0. It was a brutal loss. And then, of course, the next week with TCU and other things as well. Did you ever get the sense, because that's been something that has been out there, and I wanted to clear the air, did you ever feel like they just shut it down on you?
Never. I never felt that way. I do feel like the staff, I feel this way, and I think our staff would feel the same way, that we'd like to go back the week before the Texas game and do a better job getting the kids prepared for what was coming. Because I think if you remember, there were some stories on ESPN that morning before we played. I think Art was actually on TV, and I'm sure that the players were probably tuned into that. And there was just a lot of sadness on the part of our coaching staff, and I understood that. They were very close to Coach Briles. It was no problem for me to hug those guys and support them. But, I think it wasn't that we did a job we didn't work less in preparation. The staff worked their tail ends off to get the kids ready to play. We probably just didn't realize how distracted the players might get as the season went on. And that's probably the one thing. I think if we went back, Phil would probably tell you this, but I thought our coaches did a fantastic job coaching the kids. I just think the kids, for a while there, just for a little bit toward the second half of the season, were a little bit more distracted than they should have been. We weren't as focused on playing football as we should have been. But what was really, really fun was when we played Boise in the bowl game. The kids were back, the coaches were back. We got our feet back on the ground and just played a really good Boise State team well.
You played them off their feet. I mean, you guys pretty much dominated that game. Katie Cannon had a monster game as well. How much did it help at least soothe some of what happened the last 6 games by winning that bowl game? And I remember having a chance to visit with you. I remember and I bring this up every time because it was very eerie and yet it was very peaceful for you. You walked across the field after all the media. How much did it help to end it with that win against Boise State?
Oh, I can't even begin to tell you how good it felt. For me, it was all about the coaches and the players. I knew what they had gone through for a whole season, and I wanted so much to help them. That's one of the things that still tugs at my heart. I wish somehow I could have done a better job, kind of keeping everything together throughout the whole season. We kind of had it the first half of the season, and then the wheels got wobbly there for a while, and then we kind of got it back together toward the end of the season. And that win against Boise State, I think people thought Boise State was going to pin our ears back. And to get that win was just, for me, special to see the players' smiles again, to see the coaches. That preparation leading up to the bowl game, watching the coaches, really back to focusing just on coaching the kids. We had great practices and watching the kids play in that game like their hair was on fire. I mean, our guys flew around and got after Boise State. And then at the end of the game, to see, it was just a relief to see the kids that were finally out there having fun. I think our coaches really in that game had a really good time coaching again. It kind of justified why we were there for the players, and that was a great feeling.
Jim Grobe, former Baylor football coach, with us on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.
Coach, I was curious. There's so much debate still going on about the college football playoff. There were more meetings today, and it seems a lot of the conferences still aren't on the same page. As a longtime coach, as somebody who's kind of been able to sit back and sort of watch the landscape the last few years, what do you think of the 4-team playoff? And if you were asked for your input on how a college football champion should be crowned, what would be your thoughts?
Well, I like the 4-team playoff. I think there's some justification for expanding the playoffs, but I think it's kind of a national approach. I think you have to involve all the conferences, the presidents, the athletic directors. I think it's something that everybody has to be on the same page with. But I think the underlying determinant here should be the players. I think that, I know that some of the FCS schools, when they have an expanded playoff, feel like that when you get to the end of the year, if you have too many teams involved in the playoff, it's the healthiest team that ends up winning a national title. And so if you play too many games, you've got to say, what's this going to do, with the players? Are we going to have the best team, or are we just going to have the healthiest team at the end of the year? But I think there's some justification for expanding the playoff. But I like 4. If we wanted to expand it, I wouldn't be against that. But I think it's really everybody has to be involved in making that decision, not just one person.
Have you ever thought, if there ever was one, and they've always just not done this, of being a commissioner of college football?
I hadn't really thought about it. My guy is Grant Taft. And, when Coach Taft asked me if I'd come and help the Baylor, that was our biggest blessing was getting to spend time with Coach Taft and his wife, Donnell. Donnell and Holly now are really close. And we were always, friends with Coach Taft and Donnell. But, I was on a lot of coaches' committees, ethics committee, and a lot of other committees. But we really fell in love with them when we were at Baylor. Coach Taft would call me about every night about 10 o'clock. The phone would ring, and I knew it was Coach Taft. He'd call it and say, are you still here? Are you okay? Are you going to be okay? He was always checking in on me every night. And Holly just got to know Donnell so well. So, it became, they were friends, and now we love those two to death. But somebody like Coach Taft, who led the American Football Coaches Association for so many years, was a guy who truly had college football in his best interest. I mean, really an unselfish approach to college football, and especially to the student athlete. And when we start talking about playoffs and expansion and everything that we do in college athletics, it really needs to be focused on the player. And a lot of times we forget the student athlete part of this thing. And so I think everything we look at, and if there was somebody like Grant Taft that could kind of oversee everything, and I don't know that there's anybody ever like him again out there, but if there was, that I would at least be, prone to say, if we've got somebody that really can put the best interest of college football in front of him, then that might be something worthwhile.
There's one more thing I have. I had Kevin Gall, who works at Baylor Athletics, give me this note. Mack Rhodes hired Tom Herman at Houston, who took them at that time to a New Year's Six Bowl. He was there in August after you had been hired. He hired Matt Rule, that took Baylor to a New Year's Six Bowl, and now he's hired Dave Aranda, who's taken Baylor to a New Year's Six Bowl and the Sugar Bowl as well. What did you get to know about him when he first arrived, and what was that relationship like? And he has given this school a lot of pride, a standard that was set with him being here since August of 2016.
Well, let me start out and let you know for sure. I love Mike Rhodes. I mean, I absolutely love that guy. And when he came in, we kind of fought that fight together, and we were pretty much in lockstep, with trying to make Baylor the best Baylor could be during a tough time. And I will tell you this: one of my biggest disappointments in my coaching career was not being able to stay at Baylor. With the wonderful people at Baylor, with those kids, and with Mack Rhodes. That's one thing in my career. If I could go back and have the opportunity to be a football coach for Mack Rhodes and be at Baylor University, that would be the highlight of my career. The problem was I butted heads so much with the press and supported Baylor at every turn. And, there was a lot of negativity toward Baylor at that time. And all I found at Baylor were wonderful people, from the administration through the coaches and the kids. It was just Holly and I just had a wonderful, wonderful experience at Baylor. And while I didn't feel like I could stay, I feel like they needed somebody new to come in that I told Matt Rule, I took all the bullets for you, dude. all you got to do is come in and coach. But I think Mack Rhodes if there's a better athletic director in the whole country, I can't imagine who it would be.
I'm going to say this, Jim, and I don't know if I've told you this before, but at Big 12 Media Days in July, when you did take over, how you were grilled and the questions that you were asked and some of the things that were written about some of the things that you meant from the heart was one of the most despicable displays of anything I've ever seen in media. Because it was almost as if you were the one that they took their anger out on because of whatever the story was at the time.
Well, and that was okay. I mean, when I got to Baylor, if there's anybody in the world that I love better than Grant Teaff and Donnell too, but Grant from a football standpoint, there's nobody I love better than Grant Teaff. And when he asked me to come and help Baylor, if Baylor was Grant Teaff's school, I knew it had to be great. And when I came in, honestly, Smokey, I found nobody there that I felt like would have done the things that everybody was accusing Baylor of. And they wanted to throw a blanket over the whole university. They wanted to say everybody at Baylor's bad. And, we had some kids that didn't do the right thing, and we had some people that didn't really deal with it in the right way. But I will tell you that we found Baylor to just be a wonderful, wonderful place, and everywhere we turned. And so when they started attacking Baylor, I wasn't putting up with it, because I was seeing it from the inside. They were seeing it from the outside. And the other thing you got to remember, a lot of the people that were attacking Baylor was in their self-interest, because it was it was the hometown paper of a rival. And the rivals wanted to bring Baylor down because Baylor had been so successful on the field. They wanted to do everything they could to bring Baylor down. And the press wanted to throw a blanket over Baylor. And I tried to, let everybody know. Some of my best friends are writers and sports writers and sports broadcasters. Some of my very best friends are. So it would be no different if I said, okay, let's throw a blanket over the press. Let's say the press is dishonest and the press is self-serving, and that would not be fair. But for them to want to throw a blanket over Baylor, I wasn't putting up with it.
Yeah, and those in the press, a lot of us were so sensitive we would turn into a fetal position if that was turned around and thrown like a boomerang. All right, we took you off the golf course. Did you play this morning instead?
I thought this would be a great day for you and I to talk, because it's raining today.
There we go. Hey, Jim.
So what you're telling us, Coach, is the next time we want to have you on, we just need to check the weather in Georgia for that week. Yeah. Then the rainy day, we can grab you.
You know better. It's always great to talk with you guys. It's fantastic. I miss my time at Baylor. Holly does too. I really and truly, we feel like in our heart that our time at Baylor with those kids and those coaches and what we were able to accomplish by the end of the year, we feel as good about that as anything we've been a part of in coaching, and just have a love, a true love for Baylor University.
On the chat room, Jim, and thanks for your time. Jim Grobe, former Baylor coach. The number of things. Jim Grobe is always a friend of Marshall. Jim Grobe, born in Huntington. I love that man. Jim Grobe saved Baylor football. Bingo Jim with the truth bomb. I mean, people love you, too, for what you did in the time you were here. Thank you so much for your time, as always, and we appreciate it.
Blessed to have you as a friend, big boy. Y'all be good.
That's Jim Grobe, former Wake Forest and Baylor football coach, who came in during all hell breaking loose in the year of 2016. When we come back, the 4:30 hour, we're coming up to 5 o'clock. Jason Kersey covers Oklahoma with all the coaching changes they've had with the new staff with Brent Venables. He'll get into that with us, and plus what it's been like for the last couple of 2 or 3 days. But now, again, back to you, 254-339-1122. That's also the text and phone number. This is Sikkim 365 Radio. Discover Wood.